Yeah, so it's good. So the CIA knows now. Okay. Hey, thanks everybody for queuing in today. We're very fortunate for the first time in our district that we're having a district-wide board training. So in the areas of the groups of people that we really wanted to focus on and getting more training, obviously there's club leadership, the president-elect, assistant governors, the club trainers, but one area that we really felt like we wanted to focus on this year was our board members, because the board members are, as you know, sort of the core group of every single club. And we're fortunate in our district that we've got Lorraine Davis, and Lorraine is currently the president of the Rotary Club of Hilo Bay. She's also the chief operating officer of the YWCA of Hawaii Island. And she has substantial experience in being on boards, training boards. She's a self-professed. Okay, hang on a second. Gonna have to mute a few folks here. So anyway, I'm gonna turn this over to Lorraine. She's like I said, a self-professed nerd who actually started out as a chemist and ended up in public service. So I'll let her tell the story. So without any further ado, here's Lorraine Davis.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so I show from the beginning. Okay, so in the interest of disclosure, I am a self-professed nerd. I started out as a chemist, straight out of college, worked at a wastewater plant. So you can, if you flushed, you kept me in business. And then I worked as a teacher, I went to grad school. I continued as a chemist, became a corporate quality assurance manager and trainer for a national laboratory system. And then I moved to Hawaii. And I moved to Hawaii because my other half had a job out here. And I thought, gee, I could be semi-retired. Well, I found out I'm not a good beach bum. I felt more like a beach whale when I was at the beach. And I found out that my interests cost way too much to be semi-retired. So I opened up my own chemistry consulting business and I ran that for 10 years. And then I moved over to providing social services. So in the interest of disclosure, what I have is I am the president of Rotary Club of Hilo Bay. So I am obviously sitting on the board at Rotary Club. And I'm also the chief operating officer. And so I'm in a nonprofit and we are governed by a board. And I have been, for the last 25 years, I have sat on a variety of boards. My title that I have is Leadership Beyond Seat Warming, because I have to be honest, I was a seat warmer on several boards for a while. And it was simply because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Today's talk is actually going to be about, this is Board Leadership 101. We can get into a whole lot of different topics.
We use it kind of interchangeably, but so you can still be a viral carrier, but you may not show the disease elements of that virus. So that's why it's important to still wear a mask. You can still
Interesting.
Okay. Today's talk is really Leadership 101. We can get into a whole lot of different topics about like, how do you run an effective meeting? How do you deal with difficult people? How do you communicate? How do you develop a team? Well, all I'm going to do today is talk about this is what you should be doing, or to have a vibrant board, this is what you want to look at. So the first thing is, why did you join Rotary? For me, it's an opportunity for service. I'm a stage 3 cancer survivor. I ran my business for 10 years, diagnosed with cancer. I went through a full year of treatment. I felt like since I was still on this earth at the end of the year, I had to do something different. I didn't have any idea in terms of what it was supposed to look like. I didn't know if I was going to be dealing, handing out food at a food basket or hot food in a soup kitchen or just pulling out my wallet. I had no idea what it looked like. I ended up giving up my business, or closing my business actually, and joining the YWCA, which is a social services where we are giving back to the community 100%. There's still something missing to it, and the YWCA was a recipient of a district grant from the Rotary Club of Beulah Bay. I was invited to speak about the program that they had supported. I came in, I sat through the meeting, sat through the entire meeting, saw the 4-way test, and it resonated and went, this is the group I want to be in. So this has fulfilled the other giving back that I felt was really important. It's also a great networking thing. I'm going to jump down to the community of like-minded people, because people in Rotary who subscribe to the 4-way test and the code of ethics, I want to network with them. Their word is good. So I use Rotary business people because they're in Rotary, and I feel that I have that extra layer of confidence in terms of business dealings. It broadened my social horizons. My club doesn't know what they've brought me through by being my friends and family at Rotary. So I've got new friends, and I have a Rotary Ohana. And then the other part to it, that like-minded people, pre-COVID, this is what my mornings look like. Get out of bed, get dressed, do all the preparation, race down the hall, feed the cat, grab a cup of coffee, race down the hill with the coffee in your hand to get to the office, hoping that the coffee's still hot, and hit the floor running. What I really appreciated is that on Wednesday mornings at my breakfast club, I could do all that racing down the hill, coffee in hand, but I had the opportunity to sit and eat breakfast with people who have similar beliefs and similar thoughts, and they're not going to call me crazy for wanting to just sit and relax and enjoy a breakfast with somebody else. I can't think of a nicer way to start a business day than to do that. Something went wrong. Okay, so Rotary has its privileges. I just outlined them, but it also has requirements. Sharon Shealy, and she's on the call today. She was my membership chair when I joined Rotary. And I remember sitting in that orientation, and I suspect my eyes glazed over quite nicely while she was talking, not because she was boring, but because I'm sitting there trying to do the math, self-professed nerd. She talked about having to do attendance at weekly meetings and how I could make it up. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, I put in this many hours in my position. I have this commitment, I have this commitment. Let's see, it's an hour and a half at Rotary on Wednesdays. It's a half hour in, half hour out. I'm committing to around 120 hours a year of my time. Do I have that time commitment in there? Yeah, probably do. You can give up something, figure it out. Then as she talked about participation in service projects. And she says, yeah, they're kind of generally on a weekend. They're about 4 hours. And she's talking a little bit about some of the projects they're doing. And I'm going, okay, here we've got a bigger time commitment. All right, I can deal with that. Then she talks about my fiscal responsibilities. Now, can't just get coffee at the yacht club. You have to buy either a continental breakfast or a breakfast. So depending on what you purchase, you're going to part with around $1,000 a year in terms of contributions and your breakfast. Okay, we've got that commitment. And one that she didn't spend a lot of time with, but she did talk about, was adherence to club values and ethics, and how you're a Rotarian 100% of the time. And so this is what Rotary asks us to do in order to have the privileges that we experience at Rotary. So in a nutshell, our call to Rotary is to utilize our time, talent, and treasure. I really love the way we do this, for the simple reason is that you don't have to have equal parts of everything. If you don't have the time, you may have the talent and treasure you can share. If you don't have the treasure, you may have the time and the talent, and it's interspersed, and it allows you to use whatever you can give at any point. So, but there is a requirement that we are required. We're asked very gently and very nicely that we do this. So then now we know why you're in Rotary. We know what Rotary is requiring, and this is just as a member. Now we're talking about let's being on the board. So the first question you want to ask is, why does the board even exist? I mean, if we're a dynamic club or if we're a dynamic organization, why would we want to have a board? Here's the number one reason that you have a board, and it's to uphold our public trust. You have to think about it for a second. The public trust that we're talking about is that Rotary is in the community. We are a service organization. We are in our community. We're providing work. We're visible. We're using community funds. We're using donations. And for those Rotaries that actually have a 501c3 or a foundation designation, they're using other funds, and you have to be transparent. There's nothing worse for an organization to have something happen or go south that they have it plastered across the newspapers that something went south. And I can speak from experience is that we had at the YWCA, which we have a board, but we had an embezzler. And that hits the paper, that's not a good thing. So the board's role, the reason you have a board is to uphold the public trust. So given that, why would you want to be on the board? This is the world according to Lorraine Davis. I think the best place to practice leadership, if you're not in leadership in your own professional life, a small organization being on the board is the best place to start practicing it, because in theory you're working as a team, and in theory you're learning along the way. And you also have seasoned people and unseasoned people with you, so you're learning it and you can practice it. You're part of a visionary team. This is critical. I view the board, any board that you have, is they're the folks that tell you where we're going to go, because you have a mission. Almost every single organization has some sort of mission. So the visionary team is developing that strategic plan. Don't groan yet, okay? You develop that strategic plan because you're trying to determine how you're going to achieve that mission. I like, in my position on the board is I'm president, I'm the captain of the ship, but the board is actually my powertrain, my engine, my rudder, and what keeps it going and moving it forward. So I'm just at the wheel going, oh, let's turn a little bit to the right, or let's turn a little bit to the left. But the momentum is actually with the board and what they're doing. Keeps the club vibrant. Have you ever been in a situation where you have somebody comes in and they're talking about something and they're passionate and they're excited and they pretty much are glowing over this? Well, the same thing happens that if the board is doing that, your membership can't do anything except be excited with you. And what the board showing up, so is the membership, especially if there's that excitement. And people want to join Rotary and they want to stay on Rotary and they want to do more projects. And that's what keeps our club vibrant when you have a very active board. One of the things, and this is again, this is an observation, is organizations that are struggling, even watching it through COVID, the ones that have the boards that are struggling to be a good board are organizations that are struggling to stay alive. And I've watched other organizations. I haven't really watched too much in terms of Rotary and what's happening with the clubs, but I've had other clubs that I've been a part of that don't exist any longer because the board meeting is like, well, what do we do? And we didn't know what we were doing. And eventually the club just died out. It's a great training ground. Benson called me earlier this morning and said, Nomi's husband can do Robert's Rules of Order. And I'm going, okay, I don't know Robert's Rules of Orders. This is going to be a great training to be able to have so that I can learn how to do the legislative portion of being on a board. You develop teamwork. There is no decision that's ever made on a board that is a one-person decision. You have to figure out how to work like a team in order to be able to make decisions to move forward, because that's part of the board's function. I have to admit, it looks good on a resume. I'm a COO, I hire people. I get excited when I see somebody who says they have sat on a board of a nonprofit, because I know that they have, at least the experience of understanding what a board is, or they understand the restrictions of a nonprofit and that not everything is done in a silo. The next bullet that I have, where I talk about the different use of time, talent, and treasure. When I go to a meeting on a Wednesday and I'm not on the board and I'm just a participant in a meeting, I have a pleasant breakfast with friends at a table. We have general meeting, then we have a speaker, and I can be pretty passive. I mean, I'm observing, but there's not a lot of participation on my part. When I'm on the board, it's active participation. There's an expectation that you're going to think, you're going to be acting, you're going to be contributing. So it's a different use of my time, talent, and treasure. Could be challenging, and it could be something that I like more than being passive in a meeting. And if you have any other reasons why you would want to be on a board, these were just what I did while I'm brainstorming by myself. Put them in the chat, and Benson will he'll call them out for me. So let's move on. So I've been on boards for probably 30 years. The first one I was on, the reason I joined was I became a member of the organization. I paid my $5 dues for the year, and they said, we've lost members and we have to have, according to our bylaws, we have to have 10 people on our board to get a quorum, and you're member number 10, you're it. And so, wow, for $5, I got to be on a board. I wanted to facilitate change. If you want to have a change happen in your organization, if you want to take it in another direction, you sit on a board, because that's where the change occurs. I wanted it to look good on my resume. When you're working, I worked long-term jobs, so my resume was pretty short. I wanted something to build up my resume. Being long-term on a job is a good thing for most part, but it was also nice to show that I had a well-rounded experience. I have been voluntold that I'll be on a board. This is going along the lines of you're standing in line and they go, whoever wants to do this, step forward, and everybody step backwards except for me. Right now, the boards that I sit on, not including the Rotary Board, is because it's part of my job, because we work with partner agencies. So I get invited to sit on boards to support their agency that can support my agency. And then I'm president because they couldn't find somebody else to do it. That was it. And I'm not complaining that that's how it happened. And I'm not complaining that I'm in the position, but that's the reason that I'm sitting here. So in the chat room, I'd like you to tell me how you got on the board, because you're either current board people or you're incoming board people, or interested in being on a board, or you've been on a board. So tell me, how did you get on the board? So Benson, did we have any other reasons for being on a board?
No, but people are writing in their reasons. Asked to be on the board was asked is the most current one. Let's see. Susan Matt said, never been one to sit on the sidelines. Don't like to complain about how things are. She just basically talked about how she's passionate and wants to do the work of Rotary, so wants to keep pushing the group forward. So,
yeah.
Great answer, Susan.
It is.
I think one of the main reasons is if you're an officer, it's required under most bylaws.
Yeah, that's kind of the voluntold part.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, surprise, you're an officer, you're supposed to be at the meetings.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move on then. So in Rotary now, you're on the board. In addition to your membership commitments, here's your board commitments. It's your dedication of time. I'm going to tell you that when you accept a position on the board, if you can't make the meetings, rethink that decision, because your presence really is critical on that board, because we're looking for your commitment, we're looking for your expertise, And we're looking for you to be the part of the vision of moving it forward. Absentee board members, and I understand that life happens on a regular basis, but if you go in knowing you can't make that monthly board meeting or however often you have it because you have another commitment, rethink that position. We want you to dedicate your talent. This is where we capitalize on talents that we may not see during the course of a regular Rotary meeting, but we see them in a board. So for example, if you're a person who is in education, we're probably going to ask to tap your talent in something that's related to working with children. If you are a quality assurance, I'm the chemist nerd, I'm a quality assurance. You may want me working on policies or how to do procedures because I did the auditing and I wrote the policies and procedures. So it's tapping into the talents. I will tell you, don't ask me to be the treasurer because I can't do my own checkbook half the time. So find the right talents and find the right place to put them. And we're asking on a board, we're asking you to tap into your talents. And the talents may also be your passions as well. It's not necessarily what you have on your resume. We're going to ask you to dedicate to the treasurer. I mean, you cannot ask the board to contribute something if you won't contribute yourself. And I don't mean that you have to contribute huge dollars, but if you get a list that says who contributed to this project or who contributed to this, and this is your baby, we want your name on the contribution list as well. Now, it's not something that I pull on a regular basis, but I also feel that people watch us very carefully to see how we do so that they can assess how they're going to do. So that's support the board, support the projects. And you're setting the example for club membership at all times. So the code of ethics and the four-way test has to be a critical part of your makeup. And we want you to help us keep the club a vibrant club or move it into being a vibrant club if you don't feel that it is vibrant. So that's what you're calling. So now we're asking for more time, more talent, and more fiduciary responsibilities. So most of us can walk into a club or a board meeting or be on a board or something. We have an idea of what we want to do or what we don't want to do. Most of the time, we really get what we don't like. And I've walked into multiple positions in my career that I'm going, I never want to be that person. And I can list out the characteristics, but I can't necessarily turn it into, this is what I want to be. And what I don't want to be isn't necessarily the opposite of what I want to be. So what I'd like you to do now is we're going to move you into chat rooms. And if you have an odd number chat room, sorry guys, or no, this is going to be the odd number ones are the good news people. So what I'd like you to do in there is I'd like you to establish a recorder. And during the course of your conversation, think of positions or places where you've had effective boards or effective meetings or effective organization, and describe some of the characteristics that you encountered that makes you believe that it was effective. Those are for the odd number chat rooms. If you're in even number chat rooms, I want you to do the opposite. You have to go into the negative, and I like we'll work with a glass half full, but on this one, think of an ineffective group you've been a part of, and what was a characteristic that probably irritated you, and just write that down. I don't want you to name names because we're not going to throw anybody under a bus. For the group, effective group, if you're really proud of whatever it is, we'll brag on them, no problem. But on the second one, don't name names, just outline the characteristics. And when you come back, the recorder, we'll talk about it a little bit, but then we also want you to put it in the chat room. So you're ready, Benson?
Yeah, okay. So you'll get a little sign on your screen that'll say, we invite you to chat room 2. So you'll know whether you're in the odd group or the even group we have a lot of people, so there are 18 chat rooms. We're going to give you 15 minutes, and we know that the first 5 minutes always, hey, how you doing? How's it going? So utilize those 15 minutes, and then in 15 minutes, we'll bring you back, and then we'll work on the feedback. Okay? All right. So everybody clear about what we're going to do? I'll post it in the instructions so that you can be reminded again. All right. Here we go. We're opening up.
See you on the other side.
So you're going to get one, Lorraine, but you don't have to go to a chat room.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. There's always going to be a few people. Can you take your screen down just momentarily, Lorraine? Or I can do it. I can do it from here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just so I can see who's not in a room. Let's see. Hey, there's Naomi. Naomi, you're muted, so we can't hear you. Okay, I think we have everybody. You have to unmute Naomi so I can hear you. Let's see. Still cannot hear.
Okay.
Okay,
The other
yeah,
Zoom
yeah.
is the other Zoom is still on. So
Okay.
I'm the host, so so I'm not going to a breakout room. Sorry. How many people you got?
Oh, 80, 87, 88. Let me see
Awesome.
how many we got right now.
Very good. And so
Yeah.
on this one, the COVID Zoom, we
Yeah.
had about 42, but
Oh,
they're
wow.
asking a lot of questions, so they're still going on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no,
I'm-
yeah, no worry. I think we're okay.
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 Thanks,
So yeah,
bye.
join when you can. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so Naomi's out. Okay, so so Kurt, you're just gonna hang. You don't want to go into a breakout room, or yeah, so he did. There's Ted. So you can see the screen, huh, Lorraine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then on the back end of it, then you want to just look at some, you can ask some people like at random about feedback, and people will volunteer to do that, or we can call out groups. We have, like I said, we have 18 groups in breakout right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a lot of people. I think
We-
I think we had almost 90. Yeah. So good.
Cool.
Yeah, this is a popular session, so we can put it on a schedule for next year. You could do your Hana Ho performance. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Or,
let's see.
or you can replay the video, right?
Yeah, so let's see. I'm gonna put. Okay, yeah, because some of the people aren't joining, which is okay. I mean, some people don't want to join. Okay, so do you want to come back and do a little have some feedback time planned?
Yeah, and then we'll do the feedback. Take maybe 10 minutes on feedback.
Okay.
I don't have a good sense of time most of the time. I do have a clock sitting in front of me,
Yeah.
and then
yeah.
take a break
Yeah.
before
Okay.
I start up again.
Okay. Great. Okay. So we're gonna have about probably 10 more minutes in the breakout room. Actually,
You really had it nailed in terms of it takes about 5 minutes to get to find out who you are, and
yeah.
it was like, yeah, okay, and then you always have the question of
Yeah.
can you hear me now, and
Yeah.
then what were we supposed to do?
Okay. So odd rooms. I'm typing it. good traits of a board? The odd rooms are good traits, or the odd rooms are the bad traits?
The good traits.
Okay. And then, oh, it's not that. And then even rooms, bad traits.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I thought that was really good. Really informative. So what's
Oh,
gonna,
thank you.
yeah, what's gonna happen is that people, okay, let's see. Kurt Sharp. Okay, Kurt Sharp is asking for um, help in room 15. Okay, so I can go in there, or you can go in there. So what
I
would you
can
like
go
to
in
do?
there.
Okay, so hang on a second. Let me see. Let me put you. Okay. Hang on. Hang on. I'm gonna put you in there.
I'm zooming in, huh?
Let's see. Okay. Okay. So did you see that on your
Yeah.
screen? Okay. So hit
Yeah.
that and you'll go in there, and then you'll be in there for 8 more minutes. So you want to go.
Hey, Benson, recording you. I can hear you breathing.
Okay, should I stop the recording?
No, well,
Well, you
we can edit.
you can edit it out, right?
Yeah, I can edit it out.
Okay, because I had my thing on mute. I had my thing on mute, so
Oh yeah, well, I heard tapping. So the Toastmasters one is going to start pretty soon. So
okay.
the so I got to do the breakout rooms for that. So need
Okay.
to
Yeah.
set up the breakout rooms.
So it sounds like you're gonna be busy then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's too bad that we had all of these going on at the same time, but you know, that's
Yeah.
the only day that could do the Toastmasters.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. I mean, simultaneous is all right. It's just kind of, you got to put it out there, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you wait for the perfect time, perfect time not gonna come. So I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, we got like 90 people on this call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
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 Which
Good.
means that at least 90 people are interested. Yeah. So, well, I mean, that are willing to give some time on a Saturday to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of people doing HRYF interviews today.
Right.
And
Right.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
tree planting.
I got that. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of people said that they couldn't come because of that, but they all said that they're looking forward to the recording. So, oh well, we got to make sure we got the recording up there. So
Yep.
I'll make sure
Yep.
I drop it in the box as soon as I'm done. So
Okay. Okay.
so, okay. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks for
Yep.
checking in. Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Okay, you're back. So, do we want do a little break now, Lorraine, or you want to have feedback and then do it after that? You gotta unmute yourself so I can hear you. You still have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I would be one of those people that I just keep on talking and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
No, I'd like to do the feedback and then take a break.
Okay, great, sure. Okay, I think,
I have a cattail.
yeah. so-
I told you.
Okay. Okay, Lorraine, I think we're all back now.
Okay, so what I would like is, I'd like to start with the first one, which we described what were good traits of a organization or, yeah, or association that you felt that made them effective. And for those that were doing the recording, would you put this in the chat and we'll have it in perpetuity as well. So,
Yeah, so if you want to respond, if you could actually physically raise your hand up, because we have over 80 people on the call, so I'll have to scroll through and try to find you. So,
well, the first one I see is Keith Greer.
okay, Keith, go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, unmute yourself and go for it.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, we had a really wonderful discussion, Gwen, Sarah, Leanne, and myself. And so we came up with a lot, but those things that were really positive was that the boards were collaborative, people were respectful of each other. People didn't not only provide differing views, but the leadership of the board sought out differing views. And then once a decision was made, the entire board unified around that common decision, and so that there was no more public fighting after that decision was made. That the individual board members, they lacked ego, they focused on the greater good, and they were open to compromises. Conversations were open and everybody participates, and that was a big one for our group. And then we started talking a little bit more about the leadership on the board, since we're all going into being presidents and president-elects. And that was that people were, or that the leaders were praising in public and they were critiquing in private, that they were sharing praise with others on the board, and that they were using those kind of collective we and our statements, like we did this, this is our vision, rather than the single me and my, where this is my board, this is my club, this is what I'm doing. So really making sure that it's a collective focus for everybody. And then we talked about servant leadership as well, and how as leaders, we're serving the greater good of the people that we are working for and that we're trying to help. And it's not about us as individuals.
Benson, I think we've just found our next speaker.
Yeah, okay, great. Hey,
Thank you.
Kelly McDonald also put a lot in the chat about positive elements. Kelly, you want to expand on what your group talked about?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty well captured there. I think the exciting part for us was, I think all of these elements kind of become additive, whether it was a project team at our organization or other boards that we've been involved with, the kind of stories that we were talking about. And I think Linda had a great story about an organizational change process that went about in her former employer. One's kind of mission statement and commitments that were, 100 years old, and another set made, contemporaneously, and how very closely they were aligned. So I think, for the parable of that for Rotary is, how can we take advantage, leverage the tradition, leverage the experience, leverage the legacy, and make it real and have buy-in ownership for the next generation. And that's, part of the transformational shift undergoing for Rotary right now. So very good conversation in our group. Thanks, everybody.
So anybody else on the positive side? We had some good feedback, Lorraine, on the ineffective groups. If you're ready to move there, or anybody else want to talk about the positive side?
I see a hand raised with Rick Tabor.
Yeah, or Bev, did you want to speak to Bev Heikes? So Rick, let's go to Rick first, and then Beverly will go to you.
Okay. I put it in chat, but we had a good talk, good group of folks. So one thing that came out was good leadership, and part of the good leadership was spending time preparing for board meetings. So you come in with a plan. So the discussion was put a lot more time into preparing than actually the board member. It's the board meeting itself sometimes, right? So also finding a common vision, making sure that we're working on the same things together. So certainly Rotary theme, but what you just said, Benson, and if a board's been around a long time and it's kind of getting stale or at a standstill, you know, refreshing it, revitalizing it with some new ideas and coming together with that. And then we talked about really what you talked about just a little bit ago before we broke out, tapping into people's individual talents and making sure that, you know, people are contributing that way. And then what else did I put in there? Yeah, all of that. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rick. So we have Beverly Hikus from Hilo.
Okay,
Go ahead, Bev.
right. Thanks, Benson. We also had a good group and a good conversation. So we came out with about 6 different things that we thought were an effective group. And some of them I've already heard, so I won't repeat those. But we thought communication was important, where we openly share our thoughts and everyone gets to kind of chime in and let us know how they think. And then we thought about also focusing on goals, where we get a set team goal and look at the outcomes and results. So we work on it together. We talked about good leadership, where there's someone that you trust and respect, and you know that they're going to be focused and prepared when it comes to the meetings. We also talked about sharing the workload, where everyone is committed to their position and they do the homework and they come prepared. Another thing was just to, I think I covered it and someone else said that, so I won't repeat it, but that was what came out of our conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bev. So Lorraine, we have a couple more people on the positive side. Evan, Tom's group looked like they did quite a bit here. So
Okay.
you wanna chat a little bit about it, Evan?
Sure. Yeah, it was kind of summed up by everyone, but the consensus from our group essentially is the impact of leadership and how it trickles down. So effectively saying a good leader that sets a tone, that defines how the meeting runs, making sure it's prepared and focused, and really focusing on the time management element is kind of the most important thing from a lot of the established members that have been around, of, you know, how to get things moving and to keep it on track. So I'll just keep it focused with that, and definitely appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so you want to switch over to the challenging side, because we had a few people who put some stuff in on that.
Sure.
Okay, Ethan Allen, how about you guys group?
Sure. So we had a good discussion. We sort of took your instructions literally, and each told a little story about. One talked about an autocratic leader. Another person talked about a lack of foresight and planning. A third talked about a sort of a disengaged leader. And a fourth person talked about sort of a false mission being given to the group. And what we realized, sort of all of them are arguments for the need for a strong and engaged board, a board that really knows, has the power to do things, is given the authority to do things, that has the resources, has the time, has the people in order to make an organization work. So these are all the ways you can overcome some of these challenges of ineffective groups.
Okay. Hey, Nat, how about your group? Nat,
When you say Nat, do you mean Natalie?
Yeah, Natalie, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, getting too little too casual.
No, you can
Nat,
call me Nat. I just
sorry.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, okay, Nat, appreciate it. Yeah, there's some other Nats too. So,
Okay, yeah, we have other Nats. So
yeah, I met you.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
All right, so we it was a great group discussion. Sharon and Lonnie and Bob and I all came up with some really pertinent issues that I think are universal, and I think that other people have mentioned them. You know, going off topic, going on and on, lack of new blood. And having a lack of specific, okay, so having specific agendas, which contributes to having a lack of transparency, which pushes the board to go in a particular direction that people aren't really sure why, because those initial reasons for going in that direction have not been made clear to the whole board, which can be really frustrating for other board members who feel as though they don't have a voice in which direction the board is going in. Going over time is a big one. Lonnie had mentioned that she will just say, you know, if there's something you want to say, I will wait until, you know, after everyone is gone and we can discuss it then. But in the board meeting, that's everybody's time, and it's really important that you don't allow someone to just hijack the time of, you know, 12 or 15 other people just to have whatever is personally important to them dictate how everybody else is spending that precious time. So it was a good talk. We not enough training was a good one. Sharon had mentioned that, and it's true. If somebody is coming on to a board, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what questions to ask. So it's not necessarily fair for the existing board members to say, well, if you have a question, ask. They don't know what to ask about. You know, they're so new that it's really helpful and important to make sure that people have clarity of goals in what it is they're doing, so that just setting people up for success rather than failure.
Wow, that's great. Thanks, Natalie. Okay, it's so hey, so Matt Wong, how about your group?
So yeah, our group consisted of me and Sandy. So we just talked about
You and birthday girl.
The birthday girl, yeah. So we were just, you know, enjoying our mimosas this morning. Yeah, ineffective boards. A lot of the characteristics resulted in like derailed meetings, and what kind of resulted into those things. A lot of what we talked about was really just tangents, right? People who kind of also like to hear themselves talk, not being able to time manage, and yeah, just being able to facilitate and recognize, okay, this is a tangent that could be, you know, addressed in a different meeting, but let's address the current issue, and being able to reel people back in. That people, you know, the leaders in the group, you know, had a harder time trying to figure that kind of stuff out. So those are some of the things that we talked about.
Cool, Matt. Thanks a lot. So, Lorraine, feel free to like chime in anytime you want. You know, people are really posting a lot of cool stuff on it. So, Kat Reberg, let's go to your group. Ineffective boards.
Yeah, ineffective. Alan, Nastaro, and I had a great conversation reflecting on the boards we've been a part of that really had some serious flaws, such as not respecting each other by interrupting, not listening, pushing individual agendas, lack of consensus. We talked about a complacency, mostly COVID related, but you know, it can go beyond that. Leadership not being strong or healthy, and kind of being reduced to a figurehead, and the figurehead, you know, being driven by ego. And additionally, there can be too many alpha dogs, or we even touched upon the concept of toxic masculinity within a board. So it was good to reflect on that a little bit, and making sure that it's really about a shared vision for purpose. And one way to do that is to refocus the group back on that four-way test, the principles that brought us all together to begin with, and avoid the quarreling. So required a lot of communication, and lack of communication was one of the key factors for ineffective boards. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, how about the Moz? Dave Moz, you got something for us?
You know, our group had to talk about ineffective boards, and a lot of the things that were talked about, like the lack of goals and objectives, and also the goals and objectives, not from just the top, but from within the committees themselves. And so without somebody that has clear goals and objectives within the committees, you're not going to be able to really have an effective board, because those committees will fail. And then we also said that there were sometimes people that were asked to be chairs of particular committees but then they didn't really want to be. And then without their enthusiasm, those areas within that Rotary Club seemed to suffer. And then we would have to find other people that could take over the slack of that person that wasn't really enthusiastic about doing their job. There was a number of other things, but I think that's kind of some of the things that we were talking about.
Okay.
Okay, any Kathleen Miriam, go ahead.
Aloha, good morning. Boy, everything has been covered. I think that's really thorough. But Patty, Jamie, and I were in a group, and we talked obviously about similar things. The only thing I think we could add to this list is we did talk about that sometimes there's an attitude in some boards that we have seen, an attitude of kind of, we've always done it this way. And that can really, oh, I hear some people identified. And so that's really hard to break into, especially if you are new. Or the other attitude can be, you know, this is the way it's done. And, you know, this is how we've always done it. And so it can be really subtle, or it can actually be very direct, that this is how we do it. And so unfortunately, it can shut down people so quickly that maybe we lose people, or they're just going to be complacent on the board. So that's the only thing I think we can add, but thank you.
Okay, Jen, are you raising your hand? Jen Tanoy, you are.
I just want
Go
to
for it.
add to positive things on the positive from room 7. Mostly we went over the same thing, but one thing we thought was pretty important was a willingness to jump in wherever it's needed and when it's needed. And I know, Benson, you're a great example of that too, along with many other Rotarians. The other thing we thought was diversity, so that we try to represent all members of our clubs, you know, not only a few, but all. And the last thing is that to have diversity in careers and professionalism that can be helpful when making decisions.
Those are all good.
Okay.
This has been great. You've identified what makes a dynamic board. You've identified issues that causes a board to stumble. And when you know this type of thing, then you can start acting on this type of thing. And that was the purpose of this exercise. The one thing I don't want to do is I didn't want to dwell on the negative, but now that you know what they are, there's ways of dealing with it. And I see Susan, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
And you need to unmute.
I just wanted to say that our group, we had 5 people in our group, and we did come up with a couple of things that perhaps were not touched on. We were doing the ineffective boards, and one of them was wasted time because the board doesn't respect the work of the committees. And when a committee reports to the board tries to second guess the committees and takes on the work all over again. So that can be really destructive. The other thing is lack of fiscal accountability of the board to the organization and conflicts of interest. So it could be conflicts of interest where someone is officially having a conflict of interest with a personal organization and that board, or it could be a conflict of interest where it's your own personal agenda that isn't really in the interest of the organization, but it's more about you.
Okay. Lorraine, I wanted to also call Marianne Barry because she had a couple of things she wanted to add before we wind up this section. Thank you, Marianne.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't think I heard anybody mention it, but attendance at board meetings. You don't have a quorum, you can't vote. So it's very important, you know, you're on the board, you gotta be there at the meetings. And also, when you have actions to be taken, always give a deadline. If you don't put a deadline, it's just gonna keep on and on and on, and nothing's gonna happen. And one thing that we brought up is that sometimes your board, your club president isn't necessarily the best person to be the board chair,
Mhm.
because they may not be able to conduct a board meeting. You know, a board meeting is different from a club meeting. Club meeting, you have a certain, you know, agenda every week. There's very few times where you veer from that agenda, but a board meeting is something different. You know, you're not only talking about good things, you have to talk about problems as well. So sometimes maybe it might be a good idea to have a board chair that is not the board president. I mean, the club president.
Okay, Lorraine. I think that's everybody that wanted to speak.
Okay, they did a great job. We can put long lists on the walls. Okay, I'm ready for a break.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We got 10:05 right now. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. We're gonna start at 10:10, right on the dot. So hopefully you'll be back with us. In the meantime, take whatever you need to do for the next 5 minutes and do it. Thanks a lot.
Can I add one
really
quick
great
comment?
discussion. Go ahead, George.
I just want to add this about boards in general. As I was listening to all the comments, I'd be interested to hear about what are the best strategies to use to recruit the young working professional, the young person 25 to 40. Several of the boards that I've been on, I see very, I'll say this politely, experienced people on the board, but you know, young people 25 to 40 have their own set of challenges. But I think we need their youth. I think we need their enthusiasm. I think we need their intellect and their willingness to participate. So I would just be curious if people have interesting strategies that they use to maybe recruit younger people. And we can leave it at that. That's just a comment.
Okay, George, thanks a lot. So let's continue with our break and we could actually pick that conversation up on the other side. So we'll see you at 10:10, or actually make it 10:12 now because we're like, took a couple more minutes. Yeah, no problem. The recording. Okay, so let's come back out of the break now, and if you're back, good, and if you're not back, then you'll be back soon. So you know, a couple of points that were made, and we made a ton of really good ones. And so during the break, was chatting with Gwen Picaro, and she said that you know, that question George posed about how do we attract you know, younger people who want to serve on the board. And Gwen said in her group we had Leanne Villanueva, who just joined Rotary, young, 21 years old, and I wanted to chat, or wanted to see if she wanted to respond a little bit and tell us a little bit about what attracted her to Rotary, and you know, why she wants to be a part of it, and especially into leadership. So Leanne, I'm not sure where you are, if you're back yet. Are you here, Leanne?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah. So we gotta find you. So yeah, if you want to take a minute or so, a couple minutes or so, and tell us a little bit about, we'd love to hear it.
Oh yeah, awesome. Okay, hi everyone. I am Leanne, and I am part of the Rotary of West Pearl Harbor Rotary. I think I'm just being so fortunate to be surrounded with such great people. And part of those great people they're also in Rotary. And when I was back in high school, I've worked with the Rotary Club of West Pearl Harbor, and I've always been render myself into service activities as a high school. And I was actually part of their scholarship recipients. And that alone, I was so grateful for the club to have given me the opportunity to further my education by rewarding me the scholarship. And that sort of thought to me myself, I kind of wanted to give back in a way, because that also gave me a lot of opportunity to just further my education. And I also wanted to give back to the club in itself. But I also been always passionate about serving the community. And I think serving the community is just brings such a heartwarming, fulfilling that you get, as well as it allows me to just explore my leadership capabilities. And I think being in just the Rotary West of Pearl Harbor, I'm surrounded with such amazing leadership that I'm learning from them every day. But at the same time, I'm really happy that I'm able to share my knowledge and experiences, especially that I'm coordinating their social media. But I think one of the biggest thing that I also wanted to join Rotary is that I wanted to continue to render myself into service activities, even in college. And I wanted to learn from other people, from other leaders as well. And I think that, I hope that answers everyone's question.
Well, that's great direction for us, Leanne, because, you know, we're always trying to look for and attract, you know, sharp young people that, you know, want to be a part of service and want to be a part of Rotary. So your input is very, very welcome. Okay, so we'll, Lorraine, let's turn it back over to you and, you know, rally on.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. How do I do this now? Okay, this is where I get to be really silly.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to start where I was. All right. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the exercise that we did is we have a really good idea of what makes a board vibrant. We have good ideas in terms of what hasn't worked. Here's the good thing is that we've identified the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, if you have something that's good, keep doing it. And one of the comments that I did here was check it out periodically. If it's working, you know, make sure that it continues to work. The Dr. Phil is that working for you? If you can say yes, keep it on. What is not so good, we want to try and reframe. Because one of the things that we don't want to have happen from at the board level is that we complain about our board. So we want to reframe it. And so, for example, if we're not good in time management, the reframing is going to be we're working on improving our time management. There's still kind of a little slap in there, but at the same time, it's progressing forward. So the idea of if it's not good, don't complain about it, but work towards getting it better. And not every Rotary club has all of the bad, you know, no club has all the good and no club has all the bad. There's always a challenge somewhere and there's always really great things that are going on. And for me, the really good news is you can have an ineffective board, but you can still have a dynamic Rotary that's still going on. So it's trying to marry the two to get that optimum going on. And what's ugly is you break it down and correct it. So an example that I might have is I saw time management, and that is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it doesn't have to be a Rotary club. It can be any organization. It can even be a group of people that are meeting together to determine how they're going to take their vacation. But if you have a problem with time management, so I'm going to give a ridiculous one. We spent the entire meeting trying to decide what goodies we're going to bring to the next meeting. All right. Now, food is really important, and I recognize that. But one of the things that you could do to break it down, instead of spending time on the meeting, you would appoint a committee and say, decide what you're going to have, and we're going to go with it. So you figure out how to work around it. Another example might be is we have people who are not respecting one another. Well, I've been in organizations where we have our rules right up on the wall where you point to it when somebody's being disrespectful. And then, of course, you need the strong leadership that's willing to address it. So the standard joke is, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So just keep working towards it. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about your responsibilities, and I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not giving lawyerese or anything like that. But we have two different things that we're doing. We're governing, and then we have governance. So if we're the process of governing is that you're setting a public policy on the organization. So our Rotary does have a mission, and it's tied in with our themes, but we are a service community. So it's how are we going to become that service community? What is it that we're going to do? So we have the pillars of service. So that's part of our governing that we do, is we identify that these are the pillars of service that we're going to be working with, and then how do we get there? So these are the overriding policy. The really good news about this is that RI and D5000 have done a lot of this work ahead of time. So therefore your club really doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. They just have to go and say, hey, what has been determined? And the only thing you're going to really reinvent is the tweaking on how to get there. We may not be on the exact same expressway to get to the goal. So that's what you're going to work on. And then you have the governance portion. And that's mostly what you're doing at your level in the club is it's the system you're using to get there. So different clubs are known for different things. So we may have a club that says, I'm really interested in the ecology and sustainability. So they're going to use their authority and the organization, the process to work in that. So it's the nuts and bolts part of it. But you're doing the governance of your club, and that's how do you get there. So you have a legal responsibility, and this usually scares people off. You're the decision makers. So just keep that in mind while I'm talking. You have the duty of diligence or care. And according to my sources here, duty of care means that board directors must give the same care and concern to their board responsibilities as any prudent or ordinary person would. That means the board members should be actively responsible for strategic planning and achieving the short and long-term goals. Now, when I look through this and that definition, there's really no room for personal agendas because you're considering the overall goal of the board that you're sitting on. So my advice is you have that mission sitting in front of you at all times. You have a legal standard that you have to follow, and then the business judgment rules, which is you would treat it as you would a normal person or reasonable, and then practical obligations that go with it. And in a nutshell, this means you do due diligence, do your homework, come prepared. Then you have a duty of loyalty, and that is your board directors place the interests of the organization ahead of their own. That's the primary thing for duty of loyalty, and it's at all times. So again, you don't have any place for the personal agendas. You're considering what is the greater good for the organization when you sit on the board. And it also means that you're disclosing, there's a transparency that goes with it. You have to disclose your conflicts of interest and not using board services as a means of personal gain. So one of the things is you will never, ever, you give personal loans to board members from the Rotary coffers. That's one thing. Another one, in terms of identifying a conflict of interest, you're setting the transparency of the organization. If there is a conflict of interest, you can work ways around it. So I'll give you a primary example right now. I'm board president, but I'm also the COO of a nonprofit that our Rotary Club has supported in the past. So there is a conflict of interest when it comes to applying for grants. So how do you work around it? First of all, I disclose that it is a conflict of interest that I'm not supposed to use my position of power at the board or at the Rotary to influence the committee that determines who is going to get the district grant or the application. And so number one, I don't discuss it. Number two, I recuse myself from voting and I abide by the decision that's made with no complaints. So that's how you work it, but that's the transparency of it. Otherwise, if we couldn't resolve that conflict of interest, it would be during my term that I would not apply for any grants, or I wouldn't allow any of my staff to apply for a grant with Rotary. It's that type of thing. So you have the duty of loyalty, that is another responsibility of yours. Then you have the duty of obedience, and the duty of obedience, yeah. Okay, say that 5 times in a row. Duty of obedience means that you abide by all the applicable state, federal, and local laws. Just because you're a nonprofit or just because you are a board member doesn't mean you get to violate different things. And quite honestly, our 4-way test doesn't allow us to do that either. So the duty of obedience is just making sure that we are adhering to good practices, sometimes best practices, and we're adhering to the laws. And then the duty of good faith. We act honestly and fairly. And again, that goes right back to our 4-way test that demands that we act honestly and fairly. But the idea is that when you're making a decision at the board level, you're doing it in good faith, along with all of the other legal responsibilities. So now that I've told you what you're responsible for, and then one I have not told you about is that you're fiscally responsible. And that's probably the scariest part of anything in terms of being a board member for me, is that because I'm a member of the board and I am a decision maker, if something goes south and somebody decides that they want to go after my club for whatever reason, it goes to the board level. And so that's why you have there are different organizations will provide insurance for their directors. And I don't know about what Rotary has at the RI level in terms of insurance, but you have to be fiscally responsible as well. So now that I've told you what you've done, and I haven't seen anybody go screaming from the room, which is really good news for me. In order to be able to be that effective board director, you need to have the tools to be that director. And I heard somebody say, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what questions you need to ask because you don't know what you don't know. So in order to have that success, our boards, the current board needs to work with the incoming board, and we need to provide them with a set of tools in order to be able to do their job effectively. Knowledge is power, at least in my personal opinion. So the first thing, in order to be able to do this, is you need to have job descriptions. Now, I've been in multiple places where I will get somebody who says, nope, that's not my job description, and I'll hold it up, go, honey, I can make it part of this, right? But the thing is that when I hire somebody in and I give them a job description, they know exactly what I'm going to evaluate them on. I'm giving them clear expectations in terms of what their job is going to be, and they get to match their job description with their own skill set. Now that's for an employee, but it doesn't make it any different for a board of director. If you have a job description, you're setting out saying, this is what I want you to do. And then the board of director can say, you know what, I have a skill set that I can work with on this. I can accomplish that. I'd like to learn this. So it allows for that give and take and a communication in terms of how do I be the best board director that I can be. Then you have, I think you need a board manual. The board manual is going to be similar to the Robert Rules of Order, except for this is where your answers are going to be. Because most of the time when you're encountering problems or issues on the board on how do we do this or how do we do that, chances are you've got the answers in a board manual where there's no discussion. If you've adopted a policy, it's written, it's there, and you're working it. And then I'm also going to suggest that you have board orientation and training. I have been a seat warmer on several boards because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Now I can tell you that while I'm a seat warmer, I'm an observer, but that doesn't, assuming, my mama taught me not to assume that that's a dangerous process. So having a board orientation and training is actually going to set the board up for success. Okay, going back to the job descriptions. The reason having a job description makes for a more responsive board is that you get to identify where your skill set is, and you get to define your own personal strengths and weaknesses. And now you start asking questions, because now you do know what you don't know. You know, if you're reading a job description that says you're going to be doing a report every month for the board, then the question may be, well, what does that report look like? How long am I supposed to talk? How much information do you need? Do you want a novella, or would you like a synopsis? It's, you know, now you can start asking questions. And then to reflect on the question of how do you recruit younger people? Here's one of the ways to do it. Your job description becomes like a 30-second elevator speech. When you say, gee, I've really identified you, I think you would make a really good committee member or a committee chair for youth. Well, what does that entail? You hand them a job description and talk about how exciting it would be and why they fit. So that's one of the reasons why you would have job descriptions. Now, I'm OCD, I'm the nerd, all right? So I want as much information as I can, although I don't really particularly want to have an 80-page job description. But I want, on a job description, I want the mission there so that they know how their work ties into a mission. You want to let them know you're going to be part of the long-term plans for the mission, because what we're doing is building that strategic plan or succession so that we can accomplish the mission. You want to talk about policies that guide the members. So you're going to talk about, they're going to be part of the policy makers. The ensuring financial viability is usually a tricky one. This doesn't mean you haul out your wallet. It means you're evaluating what's happening, and then you work towards, if we're struggling financially, what can we do? So you're problem solving. I think succession planning is critical. The reason I'm saying this is that if you go into an unknown every year on who your board's going to be, you have members who are nervous. We walked into an unknown, clearly walked into an unknown with COVID-19. And we had so many uncertainties, and how do we handle this and what do we do with it? We couldn't have prepared ourselves for this pandemic. I don't think, although we can be prepared for the next pandemic that hits. But if you have succession planning and you know who's coming in after you, you know how to prepare them. You have the idea that you're going to have a club that is going to continue on, that you have a smooth transition. There's so many things that, listen, as a board director, I want you to help with the succession of this club, the success and the succession and the ongoing of the club. You want to know what type of development activities they're going to do? And these just can be one bullet points or little 1 or 2 sentences, but it's including what you expect of them. And then you really, what's critical, I heard it in the chat or in the conversation, is that if you don't have quorum, you can't vote. So what's your requirements? If you can't attend, you have to give out your proxy. And it's probably nice to, you know what your proxy is going to be involving with, say how you want it voted as well, and the time commitments. So I love Rotary. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. That is the coolest part of this whole thing, is that Rotary already has job descriptions. So I'm going to throwing up the short version, because the long version of the job description, it says, here's how you prepare to be in this position. Here's your resources, and here's your support system. I'm leaving out those because you can go actually to this site and find that. But this is pretty awesome when I look at it, because they're going, well, here's what you do for president. By the way, here's how you get to prepare for it. So I'm not being left out in the cold in any way, shape, or form. It's like, if I want to go through this stuff, I have the knowledge at my fingertips. And because there is a support system that's identified, now I have the go-to people that I can talk to if I have questions. So if you're president or incoming president, does any of this surprise you? I'm not going to read it because I know y'all can read. I think when I read this the first time, I sat there and thought, you know what? The president doesn't work in a silo. This is actually a job description that creates a collaborative and team effort. So, and even here it says, work with your district governor and assistant governor. Here's your resources. And then I have a club secretary. Now you'll notice that there isn't a vice president in here. The reason is that if the vice president has to take on the role of the president, that's the job description. So, you know, if I were going to say, what's the role of the vice president? You're the support system for the president, and your duties are going to be the same if you have to step into those shoes. In the meantime, you're going to be more than ornamental, trust me. You'll be the right-hand person for the president. But here's your club secretary. No surprises. Your treasurer has a little bit more to do. But again, really no big surprises. And they even have for committee chairs in terms of what the committee chair is going to do. So we already have it built in, and you tweak it to your particular club. So for example, in our club, our secretary actually issues the invoice for new members, but then it goes over to our treasurer. So, but it's doing the little tweaks that go with it. So now we've got the job descriptions out of the way, and you can hand somebody a piece of paper saying, this is what you're going to do. You have a conversation, you talk story. Then here's your board manual. Now, whether you have the board manual as an electronic thing that you can pull up on an iPad or a Surface Pro or something like that, or whether you have it as an actual binder, is up to you. But what you do is, because you're, again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm going to say it over and over again, you're the leadership. You are the drivers of the club. So therefore, you actually kind of need to be on the same sheet of paper or the same sheet of music, so you're singing the same tune. So a board manual will clarify the history and the purpose, and there's nothing better for that 30-second elevator speech that you're going to give on a regular basis to have something, a bullet that tells you, here's some of our organization's firsts, here's something this. I think that one of the best things that we can do in terms of advertising Rotary, and this is my personal opinion, is that we have come really close to eradicating polio. What? I mean, that's what you belong to? Yeah, I'm part of that organization that polio is almost gone from this world, thanks to the efforts of this organization. Your board manual has job descriptions, so it's going to outline expectations. It's also going to have descriptions of what different things are going on, what projects, why do you have them, what do you do with them? It contains all your documents that are pertinent to decision making. And basically it serves as a reference manual.
Who has primary responsibility for updating the board manual and doing all the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, you know, that's the tough one. This is how do you eat this elephant one at a time. I would talk to the current board and talk about what was important and what they would use. And there's some basic things. In my business, when I update a policy, it's the responsibility of each employee to put it where it belongs. So as you update, it's the responsibility of the current board to put it in that binder where it belongs. If you have it electronically, then it's whoever is the holder of the electronic master. But it's that one elephant, that one bite at a time elephant, because it's not an easy task to put together. But that's a really really great question. So again, I go into, I'm the OCD, more power, more knowledge, whatever. But first one is that I need to have that mission statement in there so that I know what I'm looking at. Where's my end goal? You absolutely want to have a conflict of interest policy in there. You want your bylaws in there at a minimum. Your code of ethics, your four-way test needs to be in there. And while we all know the four-way test, it needs to be in there so you can actually see it. Because seeing it and reading it and reciting it has a different type of impact than just reciting it. Your code of ethics needs to be in there. To make things simpler, sample minutes and financial paperwork is always valuable, because one of the things that people struggle with, and this is across the board, is how do you read those financials? And what is it that I'm supposed to be doing while I read them? One of the issues that people have dealt with is if they don't know what they're reading and they approve the financials and you have something that's shady going on, the responsibility goes right back to the board. I had this at the Y. Our board was approving financials and it literally was right beneath their noses, and I can't fault anybody, but the board at that time really didn't know what they were looking at or didn't know how to ask the question of why this looks funny. So you want examples of that. Policies, and then I have board list and contact information. That's not public information. So how you present that in the binder is up to you. It should be available to the board members, but it doesn't necessarily go out to the public. Okay. So we have governance policies that affect us, and this is the stuff that we do in order to be able to do the job that we have. It goes back to the conflict of interest. We have a confidentiality policy, and we have it at the district and the international level because we work with kids. So we cannot disclose what kids we use or what kids we work with unless we have a waiver of some sort. So you need the confidentiality policy. There's some things that you will not discuss. If you're having a problem for example, if you're having a problem with a board member or even a member of Rotary where you need to talk to them about maybe inappropriate behavior, that remains confidential. So you want to have that policy in terms of what you can and cannot talk about. How you're going to do your decision-making is really important. The nominating process is going to be critical. So these are the policies that you have to work with that most of the time they're already done for you. So it makes decision-making and working in the board a little easier than walking in totally blind. Then we get to the board orientation, and I've always asked, is this a strategic thing or is this baptism by fire? And I use the baptism by fire because we do this in our workplace a lot of times. We hire in desperation or we bring people in desperation and we just kind of throw them into the fire. Now, we like to think that when we throw them into the fire, they come out burnished and polished in a beautiful metallic color and golden and everything. Here's the reality. Usually they're charred and burned. So what you want to do in an orientation, and I'm really going to advise that our board members start doing it with the incoming members if they have a new member coming in, is start mentoring them into the position. You can invite them to come to the meetings if you want. You can ask questions, but you're setting aside time for the talk story. It sets a time for them to ask questions, and it sets time that they can ask questions privately without feeling, oh my goodness, I don't want to ask this question for fear that I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing. When in reality, there are a lot of times that we're feeling exactly that. And it's a networking process. I have to tell you that the success that I'm experiencing as the president is because I have a past president who is standing directly behind me and pushing and supporting. And I have a president-elect who is going through the training process, who is bouncing ideas off me and my past president. So it's critical to have that orientation so that you have that going on. Okay, so my governing documents. I'm just listing them out. And again, Rotary has done a majority of this for us in advance. The one that I'm going to talk more about is the federal, state, and local laws. And this is where you bring in people that know what they're doing in terms of federal, state, and local laws. And usually when whatever one is the most stringent is the one that trumps. That's kind of the general idea. An example would be, I'm going to go into the business arena, but we have a state law that says that if you have people who have worked for you for 19 hours or more for 4 consecutive weeks, you're obligated to offer them major medical. And that's not a federal law. So the state law trumps the federal law in terms of providing insurance. We have to do the same thing, and we have to abide by the law. We're not special because we're Rotary. We're special because we're Rotary, but we're not special to the federal, state, or local laws because we're Rotary. And then when I look at the 4-way test compared to the things that we're obligated to do as a board member, they fit. Is it the truth? That fits right along with the duty of diligence. Is it fair to all concerned? That falls into, and I got to change my screen because I can't read it. That falls into the duty of loyalty. The person, I heard the history of the 4-way test, and I'm going, this person really had adopted what was required in Rotary against the duty, the obligations of duty to the 4-way test. So is it beneficial to all concerned? That's the duty of good faith. So if you're following the 4-way test, you really are accomplishing what you're supposed to do in terms of your role in the board. So you need to adopt a problem-solving model. When I was in grad school, I had a 16-step problem-solving model. It was painful. It was extremely painful. But I find myself even to this day going through, I can't name the 16 steps any longer, but I find myself going through that model when I'm doing any type of decision making. And the primary thing that you're doing in a decision making when you're using a problem solving model is what's your end, what do you want to end up with? You know, what's your end decision that you want to have? And then you start assessing the risks and liability that go with it. So unfortunately, when you're assessing risks and liability, you're looking at what would happen if it went wrong or what can go wrong with that. And when you identify a risk, then you determine what do you do to eliminate that risk. So an example that I can give you is that whenever you're working with youth, you have the liability of the potential of a child being abused in some way. So how do we assess the risks and the liability with it? Well, one of the things that we do is we do criminal background checks on anybody who's going to work with a child. The second thing is we have a rule that there is no adult that's going to be with a child by themselves. And you take those risks and you basically reframe them or eliminate them so you can move forward. If you get to a point where you can't eliminate the risk, then what you have to do is you have to decide, are you willing to accept the consequences if something goes south on this risk that you can't eliminate? And then that becomes a board decision. And then you set your goals and objectives. Now, where you're going through this whole process, you finally get to a solution, you can get excited about it. I'm going to say run it by the 4-way test to see if you can tick off the boxes. Because I'm finding that with the 4-way test, if I can't tick off one of the boxes, I'm probably not making the best decision, and you go right back to the drawing board. So you're going to be a policymaker. Hopefully you're not going to do a lot because D5000 Rotary International has done a lot. And again, you're just doing some reviewing and some tweaking. But you're going to establish it, the policy, if you have to. Once you establish it, you got to figure out how you're going to implement it. And then you have to review it periodically. I can say there's probably some policies that we have at Rotary Club of Hilo Bay that are not really active because we're in the middle of COVID and we're Zooming everything rather than meeting in person. So we may have policies that are not applicable, or we may need to establish new ones on how we're going to Zoom. There's three, just as an information, there's three types of policies: governing, which is how you're going to get to your goal; the administrative ones, which really deal with the nuts and bolts of being able to comply to laws. And the most, or the biggest administrative policies and the most important ones are your fiscal policies. An example would be whether you have two people approve an invoice for reimbursement or whether you have two people sign on a check. That's an administrative policy. And again, Rotary International and D5000 has done a lot of that. And then you have the operating policies. There's not a lot of those that really affect the club because you don't have day-to-day operations, but you could have some. But those are the type of policies that you'll generally work with. So this is according to Lorraine Davis. I sat on boards where I was just a seat warmer, and I can honestly say the reason I was a seat warmer is I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And I didn't know what to ask for. So I did a lot of observing and I did a lot of thinking. And eventually I discovered that for me is that when I wanted to be on a board, I was an active board member. I asked questions. When I was put into a board without really wanting to be there and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, I just took up oxygen and warmed the seat for them. So for me is if you have board expectations plus a commitment from the member and you add that to member expectations with board support, you're going to end up with a win-win situation. And a lot of the negatives that you're dealing with, that you identified in the earlier exercise kind of go away because you've already set the stage for that success. So in talking with Benson this morning and actually yesterday, this could be continued very easily. And we've got about 10 minutes left, and this is to be continued at a further date. If you have questions or if anybody has announcements, this would be the time to do that. So, questions?
Hey, Lorraine, just a couple of things that were kind of going on in the chat while you were talking, because the question was raised about whether or not the board or the club president and the chairman of the board should be two separate people. Because right now, I would say in probably 99, maybe 100% of all our clubs, it's the same person. And so, yeah, Susan chimed in on that, and Della chimed in on it. And so I just wanted to take a minute or so and get a little feedback on that. Susan, you want to go ahead and give your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I've been president of two national nonprofit organizations, one a large one and one a smaller one. And I've never had a separate board chair and president. It's always been one person. However, we always had a paid executive director. And so the executive director would take on the day-to-day operations and didn't have any real role in running the meetings or handling the members. So I think it depends on the size, the budget, and the structure of the organization as to whether they need to be two separate people.
Yeah, my initial response would be, it would really be based on the size. If you've got a really large club and very active committees and a variety of things, your president is doing a lot. There's a lot more that's happening that you may want to consider having a board director who is actually facilitating the board meetings. But I would base it on size. And with my working in a nonprofit, we have the paid executive that does the day-to-day with having the governing board actually have their own executive team. So, but Rotary doesn't, you know, my Rotary Club really doesn't have the day-to-day like that type of thing going on.
Okay. Della, did you want to comment on it? Because you put something down in the chat.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I do agree that it depends on the size, but it does, because when you're the club president as well as the board president, you all the responsibility, all the heavy burden is on you.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's a bad idea we don't need to be paid. We're all volunteers. So yes, an organization that is financially strong enough to hire an executive director to run the day-to-day operation, manage the employees, that that's what they do. But for us, for Rotary small club with 30 people, yes, if we have enough members to have a club president who is going to run the day-to-day operation, weekly meetings, manage the members, all of that. And then have a separate board that the club president can now have, at least they know that there's someone that is going to hold you accountable if you're not performing, you're doing your job as club president. So, that's just all I'm saying is, yes, we don't have to be a large organization, but if we have enough members to have a separate board of directors that can oversee the overall operation of the club, and then have a club president who is going to, just run the day-to-day operation of the club. That, it's a model that I'm willing to follow.
Okay, that's great. I know those of us who are club presidents or have been club presidents, it's a lot on your plate at one time. So thanks for that, Della. So and thanks, Lorraine. Let's give Lorraine a hand, man, for putting this all together. She told me when I asked her to do it, she said, "Hey, all those years and years of sitting through all these trainings, I may as well use it for something." So it was super valuable, and we've never really been able to have that kind of input or training before. So I did I did promise Sonia, we have a couple of minutes at the end. We're just about tied up because Sonia wanted to do a little birthday thing for Sandy.
Okay, ready, everybody? Let's sing happy birthday to Sandy.
Here we go.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Okay.
Happy birthday to you.
Cha-cha.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Sandy. Happy birthday to you.
Cha-cha-cha. Ooh la la, mamacita.
Recorded.
Thank
you.
you.
That was
Sandy, since I'm in Maui and you're in Oahu, I'm gonna have to eat your cake. Okay. Okay.
all right.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, so thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. I know it's been 2 hours. I did want to say one more thing. People are asking about, hey, what does a club board manual actually look like? Now that Lorraine mentioned we should have one. So I'm going to put one together, a template for you, or find some examples of those of you guys who have it, and then make sure everybody gets that information. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Another good Saturday of training. So we wish you guys a good weekend and happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. So okay, everybody, thanks a lot. Okay, now
Thank you.
we can stop.